Namaste everyone here at Booktube. Welcome to my channel Hamsavahini Vajrastra. I'm Ahuna. Today's video is going to be about my TBR for the Gothtober 2020 challenge. Now the Gothtober 2020 challenge commences from the 1st of October 2020 and continues till the 31st of October 2020. This challenge has been hosted by Hannah from LadetteM, Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe and Tish from Little Wolf. I have posted a link to their announcement videos in the description box below. Now, there are two parts to Gothtober. The first is the compulsory part, wherein there are 3 prompts which have to be compulsorily fulfilled, and the second part is the Gothic fiction part. Now, the first part, which is the compulsory part, the first prompt of it is to read a book which is an LGBTQ own voices read. So for this particular prompt, I have chosen to read Luna, which is about a transgender teenager and the struggles of a transgender teenager to come in terms with their own self. And this has been written by Julie and Peters, and it is the finalist for the National Book Award. So I'm not going to read out from the back of the book because it might give out or spill out the entire story. Of course, there are many people who have heard or read this book, but I would still prefer not to read from the back of the book because, of course, it's about 2 siblings, and the younger sibling watches the elder sibling become a transgender. So this is what the story is all about. So I am quite excited to read this because it's supposed to be very good. I have seen the book reviews for it. It's excellent. So I probably am going to do a book review on this after I complete it, and hopefully I should be able to do this at the earliest. Now, the second prompt is to read is the B.A.M.E prompt, which is Black, Asian, Minor or Ethnic, to read a book which encompasses Black, Asian, Minor or Ethnic. So for this I have chosen Asian and Ethnic, and I have chosen to read the greatest works by Rabindranath Tagore. As you can see, it is ethnic, and I was fortunate enough to get the gilded version. It's a beautiful book. The spine is beautiful, as well as the entire aesthetic of the book is very beautiful. And this particular author, as you all know, Rabindranath Tagore is world famous for his work, and he was born during the Victorian age. So most of the stories over here are from colonial India, and his musings, as well as there are lots of spooky stories in this, which I'm quite excited to read. Also, the feel or the flow of this the stories are quite vintage oriented, and which is Indian ethnic vintage. So in case if you would like to, or in case if anybody is interested in knowing or watching the screen adaptations or the I would say the serial adaptations which have been made for this particular series of stories, you can try to watch the Bengali section of Netflix, wherein most of the stories which are present over here, like Postmaster, etc., have been converted into serials which you can watch and enjoy. So in case if you are looking to watch any of the stories which have been written by Rabindranath Tagore, that is the dramatized stories, please watch Netflix. However, I'm going to be reading this for Gothtober. Now, the next prompt is the disability rep prompt. So we have to read a book which represents disability, and for this I have chosen the Gothic classic by Victor Hugo, Hunchback of Notre, because it does feature a hunchback who is a disabled person and his journey towards a particular event which goes through, and the whole story is centered around it. Now, I have never read Hunchback of Notre, and neither have I read any of the works by Victor Hugo, so I'm quite interested and quite keen in reading this particular book. Now, the next section is the Gothic section, and the first prompt of the Gothic section is to read a book which has lies or is associated with lies or is about a liar. So for this, I have chosen the book by Frances Hardinge, who was the winner, which is the winner of the Costa Book Award, and it is the LieTree. And I'm just going to read from the back cover of this book, which reads as: Fate has a thirst for science, and a knack for uncovering secrets that the rigid confines of her upbringing cannot suppress. When she finds her disgraced father's journals filled with notes and theories of a man who was driven close to madness, she finally discovers a secret that might be too big even for her. Because before her are the tales of a strange tree, which when told a lie, will unveil a truth. So the greater the lie, the greater the truth it reveals. Fate's search for the tree leads her into great danger, for where lies seduce, truths shatter. So this is a very interesting book, and I've never read this book, neither have I read any book by this author, so I'm quite keen and looking forward in reading this particular book. Now the next prompt is to read a book which has a female protagonist, and for this I have chosen a book by an Indian author who is Anupama Garg, the Tantric Curse. So this features a female protagonist, and I'm just going to read from the back of the cover, which reads as: she is the new face of Tantra. She will reach the heights of sadhana, which is the journey which one takes towards or a spiritual journey that no one has ever reached in our lineage. The goddess herself blesses her. She is gifted and will have to understand how to use her power with wisdom. On an Amavasya night, Amavasya is the dark moon. So on a dark moon night, 8-year-old Riya mysteriously lands at the door of Shaktidham, a tantric house of worship, in a trance. Realizing that she is blessed with unusual faculties, the guru of Shaktidham, Satya, chooses her as a disciple over his own son Krishnam to carry on his lineage, a privilege previously bestowed only to males. But the lineage has been cursed for generations, and it is up to Riya to either break the curse or perish in the attempt. Will she succeed in her endeavor, or will her love for Krishnam become the obstacle in her path? The Tantric Curse, an unusual story set in the world of Tantra or the occult, that aims to dispel most of the myths about the practice, will keep you spellbound till the very last page. So this is all about the occult and goddess power. I'm quite interested in reading this. I have never read any book by Anupama Garg, so this is a book which I have high expectations of, so I will definitely make a book review once I complete this book. Now, the next prompt is to read a book which has bones on the cover. So for this, I have chosen another Indian author by the name of Krishnarjun Bhattacharya, and this is Tantrics of the Old. And as you can see, this is all about, this has a bones over here. Okay, so this is set in the city where I currently reside in, which is Kolkata, and it's the dark side of Kolkata. So I'm just going to read from the back of the book. As you can see, there are bones over here as well, and it reads as: the horseman had come to your apartment? Adri nodded. What did it want, my goddamn soul? Tantrics, who are occultists, necromancers, exorcists, talkers to the dead, summoners of demons, an ancient art, a select few, the only ones in the land allowed by law to inscribe upon themselves the magical tattoos of the profession. The city of old Kolkata, dark, devastated, war-ravaged, unforgiving. Adri Sen, a banished tantric or an occult practitioner, wakes up one morning to find the horseman, Death, sitting at the edge of his bed. The apocalypse cometh, wraiths whisper, ancients bleed, demons talk, fallen angels rise, assassins attack, storytellers speak. In every legend, a small grain of truth. Run for your soul, Adri, run. So this is a perfectly gothic read, and Krishnarjun Bhattacharya has done a very good work. I have not read this book. I've just read the first few pages, and this has been with me from I believe last year. I had purchased this book last year, and I've not read this book. Now I have collected, this is a trilogy, so I've collected the second and the third series to this as well, which are quite interesting. But first, let me get through this Gothtober, and it's a very interesting read. Also, it's by an Indian author, and it gives the history, or the dark history, not only history, it involves the history of Kolkata, but it also gives I would say the dark secrets of the city when most of the townsfolk or the city folk sleep in it. So this is a very interesting read. Now the next prompt is to read a book which has red on its cover. So my original choice was to read another book which was by another Indian author. However, I realized that it was part of a trilogy and I had not completed the first part of the trilogy, so the second part was linked with it, so I had to change it. And what I have chosen is Dinesh Singh, who is also another Indian author, Love Makes the Dead Alive. And as you can see, this has red on the book because the bride is completely in red. Of course, this is in red and this is in red, but I have ignored that. I have taken the bride who is red in color, and of course this is the ghost or the spirit of the dead. It is complete Gothic horror, and I'm just going to read from the back of this book, which reads as: an ominous accident puts Karan, a skeptical boy, in between the demon and the divine. A series of mind-numbing haunts sets him on a perilous journey to battle an evil power. Vasuki's tormented soul finds Karan to squash virulent Pishach. Now Pishach are the souls of the dead who have not, I would say, crossed over the other side into heaven. So these are those who are wandering around, so they are called Pishach in Sanskrit. Now Karan sets her soul free, but at a heavy price. He doesn't know that fate has unanticipated plans for him. So this is all about this man whose fate changes once he tries to rescue another person, or I believe another soul, from a particular ghost who is wandering around, and how this ghost pursues him and creates havoc in his life, and what happens after this. So it's quite an interesting read, and I'm looking forward to reading this. Now the next prompt is to read a book which occurs in a foreign country. So I live in India, so any book which is not published in India is a foreign country to me. So for this I have chosen to read Michael Sims' The Phantom Coach. This is a connoisseur collection of Victorian ghost stories, and as you can see, it is quite a thick book, and I'm just going to read from the back of this cover. So it reads as: a spine-tingling new collection of Victorian ghost stories. Ghost stories date back centuries, but those written in the Victorian era have a unique atmosphere and dark beauty. Michael Sims, whose previous Victorian collections have been widely praised, has gathered 12 of the best stories about humanity's oldest obsessions. The Phantom Coach includes tales of surprising, often legendary cast, from Charles Dickens and Margaret Oliphant to Henry James, Rudyard Kipling and Arthur Conan Doyle, as well as lost gems by forgotten masters such as Mary E. Wilkins, Freeman and W.F. Harvey. Emilius Edwards' chilling story gives the collection its title, while Ambrose Bierce, Elizabeth Gaskell and W.W. Jacobs will turn you white as sheet. With a skillful introduction to the genre and notes on each story, The Phantom Coach is a spectacular collection of ghostly Victorian thrills. So I'm quite interested to read this because I love fairy tales, ghost stories and science fiction. So this is a compilation by Michael Sims. I'm reading another compilation of Michael Sims for another challenge, which is also happening in October, but this I believe is going to be something which I'm really going to enjoy. And that brings us to the next challenge, which is the retelling of a Gothic classic. So for this I have chosen to read a retelling of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I believe, I'm not sure about the title, but it is the gargoyle's point of view of the story which takes place of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. So he sits on the top of the tower and observes what is going on over there. So it's his version of the same story. It's a retelling, of course, and it's the retelling of a Gothic classic, so I thought that might go as well with it. Now The next prompt is to read a book which has an undead character, and for this particular prompt I have chosen to read The Last Witch Trial by Siddharth Nerwan, and it actually deals with an undead character of a woman who had been condemned of witchcraft about a century ago, and how her soul returns back to avenge the humiliation and the torture which had been committed on her. So this is something which is very interesting, but yes, it also deals with the current situation of, I wouldn't say current, but the recent situations of the women who are condemned to witchcraft and sorcery, even though they might be doing just simple practices of their own which might not be accepted by the society, especially in remote rural areas. So part of this book is something which really happens even to this day, and there are of course organizations who are handling such things, but a lot of this, like we had the witch trials of Salem, and we had witch trials of Grotesque witch trials which have taken place all of the centuries. This is something which happens in India, so I'm quite interested in knowing about this, in reading and bringing this forth over here, so that there is a fair idea of the condition of women or spiritual women who are in India, and who also go against, I wouldn't say against, but those who are subjected to accusations of being a witch in case if what they practice is against the social norms. So the next prompt is to read a book which has the vintage feel of dark academia. So for this I have chosen to read The Mystery of the Fortress and Other Stories, which is the series by the detective Byomkesh Bakshi by Sharadindu Bandyopadhyay, who is a dark academic writer, and he was almost, I wouldn't say he was almost from the time of Rabindranath Tagore, but he is also of Dark Academy, and he is the Bengali version. So Byomkesh Bakshi is the fictitious character who was the lead, or the detective lead, and he was fabricated by, of course, the author, and S. Bandyopadhyay, and he is the Bengali version of Sherlock Holmes. So I have never read anything by Sharadindu Bandyopadhyay. However, I have watched a few movies on Byomkesh Bakshi, which are also available on Netflix. So in case if you would like to have that vintage feel of dark academia, you can definitely, anyone can definitely check Netflix, and any movie which is by Byomkesh Bakshi under the Bengali section. Now that brings us to the next prompt, which is the oldest purchased book in your TBR. So the oldest purchased book in my TBR is Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendrick Blake, and I'll be rereading this book. It is the reason why I chose this book is because the undead character of this book is actually a girl who is murdered in the Victorian age, and since the Victorian age she has been haunting this particular place, and it's all about how she's released or how she's trapped and how it proceeds, and with the person who tries to finish her, but then he eventually falls in love with her, and this is all about a supernatural love story. So it's very close to Twilight, but then it's a little different, because in Twilight we had a vampire, over here we just have a Victorian ghost. Now that brings us to the next prompt, which is of grey morality. So I had chosen originally to read Magical Women. However, there is another book which is in the same vein, which I have never read, and this is Yakshini by Neil De Silva. Now just to let you know, Yakshinis are supernatural beings who are, we can say that they are from the Indian fairy realm, and these are women who are grey in their morality, and they have specific powers, as well as they can empower any human beings once they are evoked. There are special occult practices which evoke Yakshinis as well, which I've heard of, and this is a very interesting read. I'm just going to read from the back of this book, which reads as 15-year-old Meenakshi is no ordinary girl, blessed with celestial attributes. She has beauty that would rival a goddess's, a unique communion with nature, and a supernatural being living inside her. Even so, Meenakshi lives amongst men, and eventually the evil eye falls upon her. That's when the Yakshini inside her awakens. As the Yakshini takes control, Meenakshi is catapulted into a world of passion and violence that even threatens her husband's life. So, before this takes place, the story goes as halfway to the heavens, in a realm hidden by clouds, a divine beauty, a Yakshini, is facing a sentence for her folly. Down on earth, a couple in Maharashtra is expecting their 7th child and is performing a special yajna, which is ritual to fulfill their desires. By a strange quirk of fate, these two distinctly different lives are soon to be intertwined. So it's about this girl, Meenakshi, who has a Yakshini living within her, and the Yakshini is supposed to be a person who has been condemned to spend some time on earth because she has committed some folly in heaven. And so it's a story about how the Yakshini starts protecting the girl called Meenakshi, whose body she currently resides in, and gradually how the Yakshini takes control of the girl, and the girl does not have any say in it. And it's just the story about the inner struggle which goes on between the higher self, which is the Yakshini, as well as the human self, which is Meenakshi. So it's going to be a very interesting read, and definitely it's completely grey morality, because Yakshinis are all of grey morality. Now that brings us to the last prompt, which is the bonus prompt, which is to watch any vampire TV series. So for this I have chosen a Korean TV series, which is the Scholar Who Walks at Night, which is also available on Netflix. And this is one of my favorites. Of course, mostly people would select the vampire series from the West, which is American or British, but then I have chosen something from the Korean series because I love Korean horror movies. And while I was exploring the Korean horror genre, I did find this vampire based, and it's something which makes you respect the entire species of the vampires and what difficulties they possess, and how a human can or how humans can become loyal to vampires so that the vampire can serve their purpose. So the story is about a common man who has to be converted into a vampire hunter, and therefore a vampire himself, to ensure that he can finish off the vampire who is tormenting a particular Korean kingdom for centuries. So it's all about that, and I have watched the series, but I'm happy to rewatch it again. And that brings us to the end of Gothtober. So these are the books that I have chosen, and I believe it's been a long video, so I will get back to you once I start finishing these books in October, and I'll make book reviews on this, and I'll post them, of course, on Booktube. So stay tuned to my channel and have a good reading week ahead, and Namaste.